Have you ever fallen for someone so deeply you thought with all your heart, maybe this is the one? You saw signs. You felt peace. At first, everything seemed to make sense. Your heart was sure. But now they're not with you. They slipped away, like sand through your fingers. And you're left staring at the ceiling, asking, why would Allah put them in my heart if they were never meant to stay? You prayed with tears in your eyes. You raised your hands at night when no one else was watching. You begged Allah to take away the feelings, to give you peace, to help you forget. But they stayed. Not in front of you, but inside you. Like a quiet ache. Like a memory carved into your soul. You didn't choose to feel this deeply. You didn't want to hurt. So it's easy to think something went wrong, that this was a mistake, a wasted emotion, a missed destiny. But what if it wasn't a mistake? What if Allah, in His perfect wisdom, placed this person in your heart, not for marriage, but for meaning? Because not every love is meant to lead to a wedding. Some love is meant to wake you up. Some love is sent to teach you, to change you, to return you to Allah. There are moments in life when a person enters your world and they seem like everything you were waiting for, but their real purpose was never to stay. It was to reflect something deeper. Maybe they were sent to help you understand your worth. Maybe they came to open a wound so it could finally heal. Maybe they were there to show you what your heart was clinging to, instead of clinging to your Creator. Because sometimes we fall in love, not with a person, but with a feeling. The feeling of being seen, of being wanted, of feeling alive. But when that feeling fades and the person is gone, Allah is still there, watching, guiding, loving. He doesn't leave you empty. He fills the space that was once overflowing with attachment with something stronger. Faith, saber, growth, strength. And maybe that person, the one who lingers in your chest, was never meant to be your partner, but your turning point. They weren't the end of your story. They were the moment your story changed, when your heart broke open wide enough for Allah to enter deeper than ever before. So if you're hurting, if your heart feels heavy, if you keep asking why, take a breath. Allah didn't place them in your heart without wisdom. He doesn't make mistakes, and He never tests without purpose. Maybe they weren't meant for your hand, but they were meant for your heart, not to stay, but to stir something, to move something, to lead you somewhere better. You're not broken, you're not forgotten, you are being reshaped, redefined, and returned to the one who loves you most. So don't rush the healing, don't curse the connection, don't regret the love, because sometimes the people we lose are the reason we finally find Allah. 1. They woke up your heart. Before they came, everything felt flat. You woke up, did what you had to do, and went to sleep. Day after day it was the same. You weren't exactly sad, but you weren't happy either. You were just existing, breathing, but not really living. Then they appeared. Maybe it was unexpected. A small moment, a short conversation, a connection that grew without warning. And suddenly your heart felt something again. Butterflies, curiosity, that feeling you hadn't felt in so long, the warmth of being alive. It wasn't just about romance, it was about remembrance of what it means to feel joy, to feel excitement, to feel awake. They didn't complete you, but they stirred something that had fallen asleep. They reminded you that you're human, that you still can love, that your heart isn't numb. It's just been waiting for the right moment to feel again. But here's the truth. That spark wasn't always meant to last forever. It wasn't a promise of marriage. It was a message from Allah. A whisper to your soul saying, "You still have a heart, and I'm not done with it yet." And even if that person didn't stay, the part of you they awakened, that is what was meant to stay. 2. They revealed the parts of you that needed healing. At first it felt beautiful, like maybe they were the missing piece. They made you feel seen, special, chosen. But then, slowly, things began to shift. You noticed parts of yourself rising to the surface. Insecurity you thought you had outgrown, jealousy that made your heart restless, an ego that didn't want to be ignored, fear of not being enough, fear of being replaced. It wasn't just love, it was a reflection, a mirror held up to your soul. And what you saw wasn't always pretty, not because you were broken, but because there were wounds you had hidden, buried deep beneath your strength, wounds that needed light in order to heal. This person didn't complete you. They didn't come to fix you. They came to reveal you, to show you what still needed work, to help you confront what you've been avoiding. And that might hurt. But that's how growth begins. Allah didn't give you a lifelong partner in that moment. He gave you something more important, a lesson, a chance to see yourself clearly, a chance to heal what you couldn't heal alone, a chance to become the version of you that's ready for what's truly meant for your heart. 3rd, you loved them more than you loved Allah. Be honest with yourself. Did they slowly become the center of your world? Did your thoughts revolve around them morning and night, even during the quiet moments meant for Allah? Did their messages make your heart race more than the sound of the adhan? Did their presence feel more comforting than the stillness of sujood? It's easy to slip, easy to give someone a place in your heart that was never meant for them, not because you're weak, but because love can be blinding when it's wrapped in hope and dreams. But Allah, He sees what we sometimes forget. He knows when someone is pulling us away from the one who deserves our whole heart. So what does He do? He doesn't always remove them instantly. Sometimes He lets the attachment grow, just enough for it to break you, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Because Allah loves you more than anyone ever could, and He will not let your heart remain lost. So He allows the ache, He allows the disappointment, He allows the space between you and them, so He can reclaim the space between you and Him. That pain you feel, it's not the end of love, it's the beginning of returning. 4th, they distanced you from your faith. Real love, the kind that is healthy, sincere, and blessed, should never take you away from Allah. It should never make you feel like you have to choose between your faith and your feelings. It should never pull you into a place where your heart feels full, but your soul feels empty. True love is supposed to ground you, elevate you, and remind you of your values. It's supposed to help you grow into a better version of yourself, not a stranger you barely recognize. But the truth is, not everything that feels like love is love. Sometimes what we call love is just attachment. Sometimes it's loneliness, excitement, comfort, or even distraction dressed in a beautiful package. It feels intense, emotional, and consuming. And when it first arrives, it feels like a blessing. It feels like something you've waited for, prayed for, hoped for. It even feels like a sign from Allah. But slowly, so slowly you don't even notice, it begins to shift something inside you. The change doesn't feel wrong at first. In fact, it feels natural. You laugh more. You smile when your phone lights up. You think about them often, maybe even more than you think about your own peace. And because it feels good in the beginning, you don't question it. You welcome it. You open the door to your heart wider, but then your focus starts to shift. You used to have such a strong connection with Allah. You used to guard your prayers. You used to rush to Salah when the Adhan called. You used to feel peace on your prayer mat in the quiet moments before dawn. But now, your mind is elsewhere. Your heart isn't as light. Your worship feels rushed. Your hands rise in dua, but your mind is still on them, not on your Lord. You used to have boundaries, strong ones. You used to protect your heart, your dignity, your modesty, your time, your soul. But now, you're slowly crossing the lines you once promised yourself you never would. Conversations that stretch past what's halal. Thoughts that make you feel distant from Allah. Meetings, messages, emotions that once felt forbidden but now feel familiar. And every time you go a little further, a little deeper, your heart tries to whisper, "This doesn't feel right." But you silence that voice. You say, "It's love. This is different. Allah knows what's in my heart." And yes, He does. But He also knows when something is pulling you further from Him. He sees when the connection you thought was a gift is actually leading you away from the giver. You begin to feel heavy, not because of what's happening on the outside, but because of what's shifting on the inside. Guilt creeps in, not just for what you're doing, but for how distant you feel from Allah. You remember what it felt like to be spiritually strong, to have clarity, to feel close to your Lord. And now, you feel lost, confused, constantly anxious. You start to ask yourself, if this is real love, why does it feel like I'm drifting away from the best parts of myself? Why do I feel further from peace instead of closer to it? Because love isn't supposed to cost you your faith. It's not supposed to create a wall between you and Allah. And when it does, it's no longer love. It's a test that feels sweet on the surface, but slowly poisons you within. A test that makes you crave their approval more than Allah's pleasure. A test that blinds you with emotions so you don't see the direction you're headed. And in His mercy, Allah steps in. He doesn't always send a loud warning. Sometimes He lets the connection start to fall apart. You face tension, miscommunication, silence. Doors that once felt wide open begin to close. You try harder, you cling, you cry, but nothing works. And you wonder, why is Allah taking this from me? But maybe He's not taking anything from you. Maybe He's freeing you. Because Allah knows when something is becoming a barrier, and He loves you too much to let you stay chained to something that's pulling you away from Him. So He removes it, through pain, through loss, through unanswered prayers. Not to punish you, not to break you, but to rescue you from going further down a path that was never written for your soul. That heartbreak you felt, it wasn't cruelty. It was protection. That ending you didn't expect. It was an answer to a dua you forgot you made. The one where you asked Allah to keep you close to Him. The one where you begged for peace, even if it meant sacrifice. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are not the ones who hurt us intentionally. They're the ones who slowly distract us. The ones we grow attached to at the cost of our faith. And sometimes, the biggest blessings in life come wrapped in loss. In a goodbye that didn't make sense at the time. But later, when your heart finally begins to heal, you start to see clearly. You return to the person you used to be. Or better, you return to a version of yourself that's stronger, wiser, more connected to Allah than you ever were before. And that return, that reconnection, that rediscovery of peace is worth more than anything you thought you lost. Because in the end, what is taken from you is never greater than what Allah wants to give you. And when you're finally ready to let go of what pulled you away from Him, you make space for what draws you closer. And in that space, you'll find something better than love. You'll find Allah, and He will be enough. 5. They were sent for a season, not a lifetime. Some people walk into your life without warning. There's no sign, no big moment, just a conversation, a glance, a kind word, something simple, and yet somehow their presence reaches parts of you that even you forgot existed. It's not loud, it's not planned, but it's real. And suddenly, your heart feels awake. You smile more. You feel like you've known them longer than you actually have, and for the first time in a long time, you feel understood. You feel connected. It feels like Allah sent them exactly when you needed someone. And maybe He did. That's why it's so easy to believe that someone who made your soul come alive must be permanent. How could something so strong, so real, so deeply felt, not be written into your forever? But not everything meaningful is meant to last forever. Not everyone who touches your heart is meant to stay in it. Some people are written into your story for a season, not a lifetime. And the beauty of it is, that season is exactly what you needed, not more, not less. They came to show you something, to remind you of something, to help you unlock a part of yourself you couldn't reach alone. Maybe they came to soften your heart after it was hardened by pain. Maybe they came to push you to confront emotions you buried. Maybe they were the bridge between the old you and the one you were meant to become. Sometimes Allah sends someone into your life not to stay, but to wake you up, to give you a glimpse of something higher, deeper, more meaningful, even if that glimpse only lasts a short time. And when they leave, it hurts. It feels like something was taken too soon, like the chapter ended before it reached the conclusion you had imagined. You sit in that pain, trying to figure out what went wrong. You question yourself. You question the timing. You question Allah's wisdom, even if you're too afraid to admit it. You think, if they mattered so much, why weren't they meant to stay? But the truth is, some of the most life-changing moments don't last a lifetime. Some of the most important people are only meant to be passing guides, not permanent fixtures. They were never your destination. They were a signpost. They were never your home. They were the door that led you to your next stage, and their role wasn't to walk beside you forever, but to set something in motion inside you. A shift, a realization, a transformation. And this isn't a punishment. It's not a curse. It's mercy. Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, felt the weight of separation. He loved and he lost. He cried. He grieved. He said goodbye to people who were dear to his heart. He wasn't spared from heartbreak, not because Allah didn't love him, but because pain has purpose, because loss has wisdom, because goodbyes sometimes carry more meaning than hellos. And if he, the most beloved of all creation, was allowed to feel such loss and still move forward with faith and strength, then your heartbreak doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean something went wrong. It simply means your heart was used as a space for growth. You are not broken because they left. You are not less worthy because it didn't last. You are not forgotten because your story didn't end with them. You are exactly where you are meant to be. This person, this connection, was part of your divine story, and that story is still unfolding. They were one chapter in a much bigger book, a chapter that was necessary to write the next one. And maybe when you look back years from now, you'll realize they weren't the ending. They were the middle, the turning point, The moment you started to become the person you were always meant to be. They were sent to teach you, to challenge you, to love you just long enough to remind you what love is, and maybe more importantly, what it is not. And when their chapter closed, it didn't mean the story was over. It simply meant Allah, the author of all things, was preparing the next part of your journey, with even more care, more clarity, and more purpose. Because the story belongs to Him, and He never writes anything without wisdom. 6. They led you back to Allah. Think back to the nights when you were most alone, not physically, but emotionally. The ones where your body felt heavy, your thoughts wouldn't stop, and your chest ached in ways you couldn't explain. The kind of nights where the world outside was silent, but inside you were breaking. You stared at your phone, hoping for a message that never came. You scrolled through memories trying to make sense of what happened. You asked yourself over and over again, why does it hurt this much? Why did they come into my life if they were never meant to stay? And when no one else could see your pain, Allah did. He saw the tears you hid. He heard the cries you whispered into your pillow. He knew what your heart couldn't say out loud. And in those moments, you turned to Him, not because someone told you to, not because it was expected, but because there was nowhere else left to turn. It wasn't the type of dua you had made before. It wasn't about success or wealth or anything worldly. It was raw. It was real. It was you saying, Ya Allah, I can't carry this anymore. Please help me. Those moments, those broken, breathless prayers, were some of the purest connections you ever had with your Creator. Not because you were strong, but because you were completely vulnerable. You didn't come to Him with a checklist of requests. You came with a heart in pieces, asking for one thing: peace. And isn't it amazing that the love you thought was sent to complete you actually led you to the one who already had? You may not have realized it at the time, but that heartbreak became a turning point. That pain became your push back to Allah. The very person who broke you was the reason you finally surrendered. You looked in the mirror and said, I can't fix this alone. And in that moment, you realized you were never meant to. They didn't lead you to a wedding. They didn't hold your hand through life, but they led you to your knees. They led you to sujood. They led you to a version of yourself that prayed with depth, that called out with sincerity, that felt faith, not just as a practice, but as a lifeline. And sometimes, that kind of transformation is far more valuable than a relationship. You see, some people enter your life not to stay, but to shake you awake, to stir what's been asleep, to show you just how far your heart had wandered from its true home. They come into your life like a beautiful storm, leaving behind broken branches, but also clean air, fresh ground, a new space for healing. Their absence hurts, but somehow your soul feels closer to Allah than it ever did when they were near. Because sometimes we don't truly return to Him until there's nothing left to hold on to but Him. And that return, it's the real love story. The kind of love that doesn't come with a ring, but with redemption. Not a promise from another person, but a reminder from your Creator. So no matter how much it hurt, if their leaving led you to Allah, then their presence was never a mistake. It was part of your divine path, a necessary detour that brought you home. Maybe they weren't your forever, but they were the reason you finally reached out to the one who is. And that kind of love, the kind that cracks you open just so Allah can fill you with Himself, is a mercy wrapped in heartache, a gift disguised as a goodbye, and a spiritual awakening you never knew you needed. 7. When you finally let go, you found peace. Letting go is not something the heart is ever truly ready for. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. It doesn't matter how much they changed or how badly things ended, because the heart doesn't let go based on logic. It holds on based on memory. You hold on because of the way they made you feel in the beginning, not at the end. You hold on to that first smile, that spark that lit something inside you after so long, the way they made you laugh, the way you felt understood, the way you started to imagine a future. You didn't just fall for them. You fell for the version of life that seemed possible when they were in it. And that's why letting go feels like pulling yourself out of a dream, one that you didn't want to wake up from. Even when the reality no longer matched the fantasy, even when the communication faded, when the texts slowed down, when your value started to feel like it depended on their attention, you still stayed. Not because it felt right anymore, but because your heart was hoping it could go back to when it did. You clung to the beginning, even while the middle was unraveling and the end was quietly arriving. Letting go wasn't just losing a person. It was losing the version of you who believed this would last. It was watching a piece of your hope fade. A part of your identity that started to form around them suddenly had no place to stand. And it's painful. It feels like your chest is holding something it can't release. Like every breath is heavier than the one before. But here's the thing, no one talks about enough. Healing doesn't always arrive with a loud breakthrough. Sometimes it tiptoes in, quietly, gently, and you don't even realize it at first. One day you wake up, and you don't feel that tightness in your chest. You're not waiting for a message. You're not checking their page. You're not wondering what they're doing. You just exist. Your heart still remembers, but it no longer aches. The story still matters, but it no longer defines you. You begin to walk differently, not because you're trying to show you're fine, but because you actually are. And then something happens. You raise your hands in dua, and for the first time, you don't ask for them to return. You don't ask for the story to change. You ask for peace, for growth, for whatever Allah knows is better for you. And you mean it. That moment, when your heart wants Allah more than it wants a person, that's not just healing, that's transformation. It's not that you don't care anymore. It's that you care more about trusting Allah than chasing something He has taken away. And the peace that starts to bloom inside you, that quiet, steady calm, that's not the result of getting over it. It's not just time doing its work. It's Allah showing you the wisdom behind the pain. It's Him saying, "You trusted me with your tears. Now trust me with your future. You didn't lose. You were led away from something so I could bring you closer to me." Because what you let go of was never greater than what Allah is preparing you for. And that something better isn't always another person. Sometimes it's a version of you that's finally at peace alone. A version of you that no longer depends on someone else to feel worthy. A version of you that doesn't chase love. Because you've become it. Not the romantic kind, but the divine kind. The kind of love that starts with loving Allah and ends with feeling whole, even when no one else is standing beside you. Letting go didn't destroy you. It refined you. It stripped away the illusions and showed you how strong your heart actually is. How much deeper your faith could be. How much lighter your soul could feel once you stopped forcing what was never meant to stay. So when you finally released it, not in bitterness, but in trust, that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. The beginning of becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone softer, someone who carries pain with grace and peace with purpose. And the peace you feel now, that isn't emptiness, it's completion, not because you got what you wanted, but because you finally found what you needed. You found Allah, you found yourself, and you found a kind of love that never fades, never leaves, never breaks. His. So if you're still sitting there, quiet but overwhelmed, still holding your breath between maybe and what if, still caught in the ache of unanswered questions, why did Allah put this person in my heart if they were never meant to stay? Maybe now, slowly, quietly, through your pain and reflection, you're starting to see the truth you couldn't see before. Maybe it was never about a relationship. Maybe it was never meant to become a marriage. Maybe it was never about rings or shared plans or growing old together. Maybe it was about you, your journey, your growth, your return. Maybe they weren't the partner you were supposed to walk through life with, but the wake-up call that stopped you in your tracks and forced you to look inside. They didn't come to complete you. They came to reveal you, to show you what your heart was made of, to test what your soul was holding on to uncover wounds you had buried and dreams you had paused. They came to awaken what was asleep, not just your desire for love, but your connection to your Creator, your dependence on the only one who never walks away, the only one who never leaves a heart unanswered. They stirred your emotions, yes, but they also stirred your need for Allah. They brought up your insecurities, your fears, your longing, not to break you, but to show you what still needed healing. Maybe their love wasn't meant to stay, because their role wasn't to build a future with you. It was to push you back to the one who holds your future. Some people are not meant to be the destination. They are the spark, the disruption, the divine interruption, the moment everything shifted, so your soul could rise from its sleep. And maybe that's the most important kind of love, the kind that doesn't stay long, but stays forever in the mark it leaves. Because it didn't end in a wedding, it ended in awakening. They made you realize that the kind of peace you were chasing can't be found in human hands, that the kind of safety you longed for was never in someone's attention, but in Allah's protection. They didn't steal your love. They helped you realize where it truly belongs. They didn't take your peace. They exposed how unstable it was without Allah at the center. They didn't ruin your life. They revealed what was missing from it all along. So if you're still hurting, still asking, still wondering if your love was wasted, it wasn't. Because nothing that brings you closer to Allah is ever wasted. Nothing that makes you fall into sujood crying, that makes your du'as deeper, that brings your hands back up in surrender, is meaningless. That ache you feel in your chest, that's not emptiness, that's depth. That's proof that you loved, that you felt, that your heart is capable of something real. But now, it's time to feel something greater, not another person, but Allah. The peace you're searching for is not on someone else's tongue. It's in His remembrance. It's in the stillness of prayer. It's in the safety of knowing that what's meant for you will never need to be chased. And what's not meant for you can never bring you lasting peace. So if this message met you in a moment of silence, if it reached the place in you that still aches, let it be a reminder you're not alone. Your heartbreak is not meaningless. Your return to Allah is your reward. And if your heart is still holding on, still hoping, still questioning, still healing, let it hold on to this instead. Healing begins with understanding, peace begins with surrender, and love, true, lasting, eternal love, begins and ends with Allah. May He soften your heart, not just to release what wasn't yours, but to receive what always was, His mercy, His love, His plan. May He fill your heart with light that no heartbreak can dim, with clarity that outshines confusion, with a purpose that makes the pain make sense. And may He gift you a kind of love that doesn't confuse you, doesn't exhaust you, doesn't lead you away from Him, but brings you back. A love that doesn't fade, doesn't leave, doesn't break. His.